Hi everyone, it's Margaret Manning here. Welcome to 60 and Me. This is the place where women who are aging beautifully come to be inspired. My guest today is Dr. Sarah Brewer. Now, Dr. Sarah trained as a hospital doctor and also a GP at Cambridge University in the United Kingdom, and has spent a lot of time writing books now on self-help approaches to treatment and nutritional medicine. The topic we're going to talk about today is something that a lot of women are interested in, and that is myths concerning the aging brain. And Dr. Sarah has written several articles on this topic and supplements that you might want to consider to help. So, welcome to the show, Dr. Sarah.
Hi, hello.
It's great to have you here. And I wanted to give that introduction because the brain is such a mystery to us as we get older. We know it's holding everything together somehow. But there's so many myths about the brain of older people. And I'd love you to share what you think those are and why they are true or not true.
Okay. Well, I think one of the key things about the brain is an old adage: if you don't use it, you lose it. And that is so important because brain is constantly remodeling itself. The brain cells and connections that you don't use are pruned away and new ones are made. Yeah. So learning new skills is terribly important. So, going to evening classes, learning a new language, even just reading a challenging book, these things can all help to lay down new connections in the brain. But as with everything, diet and lifestyle are so important as well.
Well, that first point you've made is really important, and that is a myth, isn't it? That our brain somehow stops developing as we get older, that we don't create new pathways in the brain, that pretty much what we've got at age 60 is what we're going to have. And what you're saying here is that's not true, that there are things that you can do, like you mentioned, learning a new language or reading a book that's outside your normal area of expertise or knowledge, and just pushing it a little bit. But we'll talk about foods then. I mean, what are some of the things you could think about using to strengthen your memory? That's another thing, another myth, that you forget everything.
Yeah. Well, I think there's two key areas really. One are green leaves, leafy greens, and one is fish. So there was a very recent trial, very robust, lots of people looking at older people and looking at their diet, and it found that those that ate green leaves, so things like broccoli, spinach, kale, Brussels sprouts, 1 or 2 portions a day, had brain cognitive function, which is ability to think straight, equivalent to somebody 11 years younger than them.
Wow.
So these green leaves are very key because they contain lots of nutrients which feed the brain and allow it to work properly. Some of those are things like vitamin K, folate, the B vitamins, something called nitrates, which are converted into something called nitrites in the body, and that opens up blood flow, makes so more oxygen and nutrients are getting to the brain. So yeah, eat your spinach. Granny, when she said to me,
right.
She's right.
And another thing that someone mentioned to me was that when you cook the vegetables, the green vegetables, drink the water. What do you think? Is that true?
I wouldn't say drink the water, but I would say make soup from it, make gravy from it. It doesn't taste that good. When you see the water, it's green because it's got the sort of things like the chlorophyll and the B vitamins have gone into it, the riboflavin in particular, and coloured it. That's the good bits, or steam your vegetables. Don't boil them, even better. Yes. Eat them raw would be even, better still. Pulverize them into a smoothie, for example. So you've got them raw, but they're also broken down to release the goodness inside the plant cells.
I really love our conversations here, Dr. Sarah, because you're a doctor. Obviously, you've been through all the medical training and you've had years of experience, but you're really one of the few people that I've actually come across who is so passionate about food, about the dietary connection between good food and a healthy brain. And what other, so you mentioned fish, any particular type of fish?
Well, fish is often thought of as brain food, and for a reason, because it is associated with not only better brain function, but also better mood. And when you look at the intake of fish across populations, countries with the greatest intake of fish, such as Scandinavia, for example, have much less incidence of depression and low mood, which is interesting. Now, the reason that fish is so important is a number of things, mostly because the oily fish in particular, so things like sardines, salmon, mackerel, herring, they contain long chain omega-3 fatty acids,
Right.
two in particular, DHA and EPA. And they're very important for brain structure. Something like 70% of the fat in the membranes of brain cells consists of DHA. So DHA is very important. We can't make it. Well, we can make it, but not very well. It's important to get it from diet. EPA is more involved in brain signaling, so allowing brain cells to communicate one to the other.
Right.
So getting that from fish is helping the brain.
So where is that oil? Is it on the skin of the fish? For example, salmon. Should you buy salmon with the skin still attached to it? A lot of it's now been cleaned and made beautiful without the skin.
It's actually in the cells themselves, so in the body of the fish. So, some people take cod liver oil supplements, for example. Now that obviously just comes from the liver of the cod, because cod isn't an oily fish, but there is oil in its liver. The problem with liver, I suppose, is it concentrates pollutants.
Yes.
So you wouldn't want to eat it raw, but getting it in a supplement form, which has been purified, then is a good way to get some of these omega-3s. And with cod liver oil, you're also getting vitamin A and vitamin D, which you don't get in the omega-3 body oil supplements, if you like.
You mentioned DHA. Sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off there. Go ahead. Continue your thought.
Vitamin D, we now know, is also very important in the brain and is involved in brain function and mood. So that might be another reason why eating oily fish is good for us, because of the vitamin D that comes from it.
Okay, that is super interesting. I love fish and I eat a lot of salmon, but kippers in England, I used to love mackerel, I guess. Is that what they are? I think so. But
kipper, I think it's herring, isn't it? It's smoked herring, I believe.
Kippers are brilliant. Every time I go to the UK, I have some kippers. I just love the taste. They're very salty, but anyway, they're great.
Yeah, well,
you mentioned DHA. Is that a supplement that you would recommend?
You can get it in supplement form, yes. Obviously, that's the omega-3s. If you're vegetarian, then you can get DHA from an algae supplement.
Okay.
And that's where the fish themselves get it. They don't make the DHA. It's from the algae that they actually eat. So that's quite interesting. But if you don't eat fish, ideally 2 portions of oily fish a week. If you're not getting that amount, then supplements are very important, I believe, for brain health. But obviously diet should come first. So I would prefer you to eat the fish, because you're getting other things as well. They're getting the protein, of course, which is...
I was going to say, protein is really important too.
Yes. Yeah.
That's really cool. One of your books, actually, I wanted to mention, is Essential Guide to Minerals, Vitamins, and Herbal Supplements. It's one of your books you've written a few years ago. But that one sounded very interesting to me because, you get a guide to all of the things you're mentioning here from natural sources, from plants rather than from a pill. Are there any other books that you've written that you would recommend on this subject of brain health or memory? I think you mentioned a couple of articles you've written.
Yeah, certainly some articles on my website, drsarahbrewer.com. And in fact, if you look at the top in the menu, it says free book, and you can click on that. You don't even have to leave your email address. You can just from there download a free book on vitamins and minerals and whether you actually might need one. So that could be quite useful for some people. But so I'm very interested in a topic called Neurotropics, which is the use of smart supplements, if you like, which have been shown to improve the ability to think straight. And these are good for younger people as well as older people. Lots of people will know ginkgo biloba, for example, which is a herb from a leaf which has been found to improve memory, and it seems to work by increasing blood flow to the brain so that more oxygen and nutrients can get in there. But the key neurotropic, which is absolutely fascinating, is one called, it's a bit of a mouthful, Bacopa monnieri. And lots of preclinical research shows that actually stimulates the laying down of communication channels between brain cells. And this has been done in cell cultures. When they add Bacopa monnieri extracts to brain cells in culture, they put out new connections and they form new networks. And this is something that could really transform our ability to overcome perhaps memory loss in later life. And I've started taking it. I don't always remember to take it every morning. So obviously it hasn't fully worked
yet. Which is the main problem that you're trying to deal with here.
I've got it here next to my keyboard to remind me to try and take one every day. And I think it's fascinating that something that comes from a plant can stimulate our brain cells to connect to each other. I mean, that's just stunning.
That's really interesting. I was just at a TEDx talk in Zurich, and there was a doctor there talking about neotropics, and it was it was one of the talks, and he was also saying that it's very helpful with relationship to mental health, so that if you the whole point of I guess people who are very depressed kind of get in loops. Their mind doesn't carve a new neural pathway. But he was talking actually about psychedelics as well, how they can help, and very interesting talk. But what you're saying makes sense, though, that this nootropic actually helps the brain cells to reconnect and make new healthy pathways if you have something that's damaged.
Obviously, brain cells in a petri dish aren't getting an awful lot of stimulation. They're not watching a film, they're not reading a book. So the fact that they're just lying there and making these connections. Think what would happen to us if we're actually doing something to stimulate the connections in the first place. I think it's absolutely fascinating.
Well, look, you're actually a great example. I mean, I love your energy, and you're nearly our age group. You're almost 60 yourself, and you've got so much energy. I mean, I'm putting it all down to this Neotropic. That's what.
Yes.
No, it's fascinating. And another thing that my son was telling me about is this thing of adaptogens, which I think are something similar, or they serve a similar purpose in the brain.
Yeah. Well, adaptogens are herbal medicines which have been used for thousands of years, usually, because they help the body to literally adapt to stressful situations. So, again, they work in a similar way to some of these nootropics. They allow cells to work more efficiently by increasing oxygen usage, by able to burn glucose more efficiently, for example.
Yes.
They help to normalize hormone levels. So when you're feeling stressed, you've got very high cortisol stress hormone levels, and they help to lower those. And so they reduce the pressure, if you like, on the adrenal glands, so that they're then able to do some of the other things that they do, rather than just releasing stress hormones. So yes, adaptogens, things like ginseng, for example, is perhaps the best known one. And there's quite a few ginsengs. There's the Korean ginseng, but there's also something called Siberian ginseng, which is it's not closely related, but it has a similar effect, and that's very good for boosting immunity, and it's used, particularly in Russia, to help to suppress or to prevent colds and flus and coughs and that sort of thing. So, yeah.
It is fascinating, but those are actually plant products. Now, the neotropics I want to mention are actually man-made or women-made products, right? Are they from plants?
No, most of them are natural extracts. There's something called L-theanine, which is an amino acid which is extracted from tea. I know we all know when we're feeling stressed, let's have a cup of tea, because tea has a sort of calming effect, and a lot of it is to do with this L-theanine, which is found in tea. So yes, most of them are natural herbal extracts, which have been used and studied. But then there's minerals like magnesium. Magnesium is very calming, and a lot of us are quite lacking in magnesium because, especially if you're not eating whole grains and vegetables where you find it. You can absorb that through your skin, so you can add some magnesium flakes to your bath, and you'll absorb the magnesium. It'll have a relaxing effect, and you'll sleep so much better that night as a result.
I'm really glad that we went off a little bit on this topic, though, because a lot of women in the community do deal with stress. I mean, social isolation is a really big issue for older women. Husbands have passed away or friends have moved away, and so they transfer their the eating habits don't stay at the same level that they, eating good food. They tend to just feel depressed or lonely and not do exactly what you've been suggesting, to eat a healthy diet, to try some of these new supplements that could help them feel better and stronger.
Yeah, and reaching out. I mean, your community, being able to, even if you're stuck in the home because you can't get out for illness or, lack of mobility or whatever, you can still communicate now, which is, it's very different to a generation ago when we didn't have the internet. It had transformed lives.
It has really done that. Well, to do with the brain, though, I just wanted to touch on one more thing, because you talked about using the brain. We've talked about using supplements, but what about this whole issue of dementia and the fear of dementia? How real is that, do you think, for people living like now in this 2018?
Well, we will all experience memory lapses. That's normal. Stress can make it worse, lack of sleep can make it worse. So don't fear if just because you can't think of a word, you've got word blindness, that you're going to become demented, because that isn't always the case. But if you are progressively losing your ability to remember things, if personality changes, things you might not notice yourself, but becoming disorientated, not knowing what day it is, what time it is, it's not just not being able to remember what you had for breakfast. It's more profound than that, and it's something that other people might notice in you more than you noticing in yourself. And obviously, if you do worry that you are losing your memory more than you should, then do go and see your doctor, because there's some very simple questioning tests and things that can be done to assess if you need further workup and help.
It's really good advice. I mean, I know a lot of us walk from one room to the other and forget why we're there, or, our short-term memory is perhaps a problem. But I actually think a lot of it's simple. We've talked about meditation and mindfulness. A lot of it's just having too many channels going on in your brain, thinking of too much, and then, just kind of calm down.
No shame in using Post-it notes. Write notes to yourself. They remind you what you need to do.
If you could see my desk, you would actually. I've got them everywhere, little cards everywhere. This is really good. And I guess that's about all that I was thinking. Is there anything else to do with brain health that's the aging brain, as we're talking about it, that people should know about?
Well, I think one of the interesting areas is actually the connection between the gut and the brain. And there's a very important hormone or chemical known as serotonin, which is related to mood. Yes. And we now know that 90% of our serotonin is made in the lining of the gut, and it's stimulated by the bacteria that are living in the gut. So healthy diet, having probiotics, things like yogurt, foods that have got the friendly bacteria in them, it can, it sounds extraordinary, but it can affect even your ability to select certain foods. And it does seem that the bacteria we have in our gut might stimulate our appetite, for example, so we're more likely to put on weight. And in 5-10 years' time, we'll probably be regularly having our microbiome, which is all the genes and the bacteria in our gut, assessed, and we might have these fecal transplants, which are known as transfusions, which will replace the bacteria that maintain a healthy brain function and appetite. And it's a fascinating area.
That is I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that is a whole area that I know people are interested in, and maybe we could do another interview on that in the future. We could just do that one subject, or maybe others, as people will suggest, make recommendations. But I think that's a really fascinating topic, and it really links to what your specialty is, which is food and nutrition and medicinal nutrition, how it can help. Is there a book that you might recommend? I mean, have you written a book on this topic of gut and brain, or can you recommend?
I've written books on irritable bowel syndrome, which again is another problem it seems to be linked with an imbalance of bacteria in the gut, an imbalance of serotonin produced in the lining of the gut.
Right.
And this serotonin in the gut, it seems to be involved in the movement of food through the gut, so the contraction and the propulsion. Now, normally the brain ignores those signals and doesn't take any notice of them, but in irritable bowel syndrome, you're feeling the contraction and the pain because the brain isn't ignoring them, and it may be related to an imbalance of serotonin. So there's lots of very exciting research going on.
Wow.
The link between the gut and the brain, and it's now known as the gut-brain axis. It's not just isolated gut. We're now thinking about the neurology as well.
I'm really fascinated by this, and how do you make serotonin if it's not made in the brain, which is where one of the big myths that we thought it was made there? How is it made? It is
made there, but it's also more of it is made in the gut, and it's stimulated by having a healthy balance of bacteria in the gut.
It's bacteria, so it's probiotics that you need to.
Yeah, so and feeding them on the correct thing. So all this rubbishy, processed, stodgy, sugary foods that we're eating, it's not good for the bacteria. It's not good for us.
Yes.
Going back to a more whole food diet. I mean, don't think for one moment that I practice what I preach. I mean, I love a nice gooey toffee as much as anyone, but it's getting balance and making sure that 80% of what we eat is good, and then just having a few treats.
Well, I would take a salted caramel over a carrot just about any day. So I'm with you. But look, like, yeah, we've got to find balance, like you said, and I think that's really, really useful.
And dark chocolate, of course, is always key because that is good for you, and it's a treat, and it's something we should all be eating every day.
Well, actually, and it's actually now starts to taste good. Like a lot of the chocolate that was 100% or 90% in the past used to be quite grainy and not very tasty, but they've now created, I'm in the land of chocolate right here in Switzerland.
Well, of course, yes.
I'll just send you some Lindt 90%. It's really amazing. So, well, I'm honestly so happy that we got a chance to talk. I want to refer people to your website, drsarahbrewer.com, and also just check out on Amazon some of Sarah's books. The IBS book on irritable bowel syndrome. That's one I'm glad you mentioned that. And well, the latest is Eat Well, Look Great, which I think is a great title. And is there anything else that you'd like to say to close on this? I mean, in terms of aging with a positive attitude.
Yeah, I think, as we said before, do puzzles, keep your brain active, crosswords, cryptic crosswords, Sudoku. There's most newspapers now have them in there rather than chucking that away and ignoring it. Just start jotting down and using a dictionary. Learn a new word every day. My dictionary, I love my dictionary, my thesaurus. I'm using my thesaurus. But I have thesaurus.com up on my screen every day when I'm writing. I like finding new words. Yeah.
Well, with that many books that you've written, you actually would need to think up a few new words here and there. But we also, by the way, have a games button on our website. We have 60andMe has a free games feature, and it's got all the things you mentioned to play for free. So that's another option too. But Dr. Sarah, I'm so happy we talked. Thank you again for your time. And let's get back together in the spring and do some more topics.
I would love to.
Sounds
Thank you,
great.
Margaret.
Okay, bye for now.
If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our 60andMe YouTube channel and also visit our website. We are a strong and dynamic community of women over 60. We're challenging aging stereotypes, and every day we share fascinating stories, interesting questions, and great conversation.